Hello everyone, welcome to CareersTalk. I'm Suran Sharma, an Agile consultant based in Netherlands, and today we'll go over Scrum Master interview questions that Infosys asked in May 2025, shared by one of our WhatsApp group member who just had their interview. So if you also want to join our WhatsApp discussion or job community group, just click the join button and become a silver or a gold member. But friends, before we begin, if you're new here, please take time to explore our channel. You will find tons of possible Scrum Master interview questions. And if you truly want to succeed in your role as a Scrum Master, excel in your career as a Scrum Master, then this channel, Career Stock, is all you need. So please subscribe to our channel. And if you find this session valuable, don't forget to hit that like button. So without further delay, let's get started. Let's welcome today's guest, Anvitika. So yes, Anvita Prabhu, you might have seen on our channel. She is a familiar face on our channel, and we have done a couple of sessions with her in before in the past. So welcome, Anvita, and thank you for joining us today. Anvita, over to you.
Thank you, Sunan. Thank you once again. And as Sunan mentioned, right, this is one-stop solution for you for all the interviews questions. So if anything you want to know in Scrum Master or be it BA or be it PO, this is one-stop solution, I would say. And thank you once again, Sunan, for giving me this opportunity. Yeah, let's get started.
Thank you, Anvita. Okay, so the very first question: let's say you are facilitating Scrum, different events, and things like that in your organization. But the challenge is people still have waterfall at their heart, and your managers keep intervening mid-sprint with some change request and something like that. So how do you educate and align them without causing a friction between
Hmm.
the team within an organization? Yeah.
So, first thing, as a Scrum Master, always you need to have your empathy in hand, right? As I mentioned, all in almost all the answers of mine, you need not, question out right away like why there is scope change or why there is, it would interrupt the team or stuffs like that, right? First, you need to understand from the manager's perspective onto from where exactly it is coming, right? Is this a real ask from the management? Like I mentioned in one of the interviews, right, previously, it could be that from the management, there are certain things which has to be completed within the stipulated time. In that case, some of the requests, some of the changes would be accepted, but there are some process in which it has to be accepted, definitely. Not during the middle of the sprint, straight away you disrupt the team or put them in the chaotic situation and get it done. That's not the process, right? So you need to understand from the manager's perspective onto why exactly it is coming and from where it is coming, right? And what is the priority of that particular change request. First thing is that, and second thing is that if it is abruptly coming in and without any knowledge of the product owners or any of the management folks or any of the team members, right, then you need to educate the team. First of all, I would say that educate the manager, educate the team, and explain them. Let's say, for example, you're following a Scrum framework. So in that case, you need to explain what exactly Scrum principle holds on to and what are the values of it and why exactly we have sprint duration, why exactly we have the sprint goal, right? What is the intention of that? So if this is being hampered, right? If in case there are multiple change requests coming in between the sprint, then there could be possibility that the sprint goal is hampered and the team is little in a chaotic situation, right? They are not aware of what has to be prioritized, and maybe they're in the midway of some development aspect and they need to do context switching. So that becomes a difficult aspect for them, and probably there is misunderstanding between the product owner and the manager, right? Product owner is emphasizing on certain aspects that has to be delivered, whereas the manager is saying something else, right? So here you see that multiple aspects because of which it might hinder the team, right? So educate the team and explain the hold on to empathy and explain the manager onto how it is impacting the team. It is definitely putting the team it might put the team in the chaotic situation, and at the same time the team may not be able to deliver aspects in the stipulated time period or whatever is the delivery due date which is being set. And even they might you know uh, uh, be not aware of the roadmap that is being set maybe for 2 3 sprints ahead, right? And also it impacts the velocity, right? How can we not forget that metrics, right? So it will impact the velocity as well. So explain all these factors and then upon educating, you need to have a proper process in place, right? If there are change requests, like for example, in our organization, what happens is whenever there is a change request, it goes to higher management. Like we have something called as outcome owners, who is like about the product owners who would get the requirements basically for the internal developments. So it goes to them, and upon their approval, we do a particular change request. Of course, there would be a discussion with the stakeholder, there would be discussion with product owners, and even the team would be aware of this, right? So formulate a particular process for this change request. That is important. And then discuss with the product owner. And so, as if this particular change request is important for the team to be developed within the let's say this particular sprint or the next sprint, then deprioritize certain aspects so that the team is not overburdened, right? With the let's say whatever the work items being whichever the work item the team takes in for them, right? So have a clear communication across the manager, with the manager, product owners, and whoever like is associated with the delivery of that particular project. And also have a particular DOD criteria, right? Definition of done forms a very important aspect, and you need to explain to the manager as well why exactly it is there, and what if this particular thing is not being considered, and you encourage most of the scope change, or maybe the change request in the middle of the sprint, then we are not abiding by the DOD criteria as well. As a result, it might hinder our quality, what is being delivered, right? So that is one more aspect. And with all these things in place, now you have educated, now you have a process in place, you have communicated appropriately, and the team is also aware of what they have to prioritize and what they can deprioritize, right? With the clear communication. So I think with all these things you put in place together, you can get a particular process in flow without hindering the sprint goal, as and the team is also in a smoother fashion to deliver the aspects within the given desired timeline. So I think this would be the good approach.
Wonderful, Avantika. I really like the way you clearly explain all the points. So
Yeah.
I've just jotted down whatever you mentioned. Just
Yeah.
to recap it very quickly.
Yeah.
So build empathy before uh, education, I think. So you also mentioned, like, instead of just jumping straight to you should not interrupt, we should first
Yeah.
listen, understand like why
Correct.
they feel the need to intervene, and are they worried about any business priorities or deadlines or visibility. So showing your understanding, like showing that you understand their concern, build a trust and open the door for changes. So I think that's the very first thing which you talk about. Then you mentioned
Hmm.
about education. I think educate through a real example will be the key over here. So if you can,
Hmm.
explain, many manager come from a waterfall and they haven't seen the benefits of Scrum in
Right.
action. So if you can
Right.
walk them through examples from your team or from your past experience, that shows that how this mid-sprint changes reduce the team performance, or that
Hmm.
can lead to a lower quality versus when the teams were allowed to focus. So that will give them a different perspective, I think.
Right.
And then third thing, which a little bit I want to emphasize is if we can explain the role of a product owner. Sometimes
Hmm.
managers, they don't realize that there is already someone responsible for prioritizing and balancing the new work, which is a product
Yeah.
owner. So
Yeah.
if we can help them to redirect their request there, explaining that this ensures the business value is maximized without derailing the ongoing commitment, I think that's the key over here. Sometimes they are not aware about. So
Hmm.
that's something I think which we can also mention. And then of course we can provide a clear, transparent change process, as you mentioned. So
Hmm.
we should create a lightweight, agreed upon process for urgent requests. So for example, if
Hmm.
it's not urgent, it goes into the backlog for next sprint. Or if it's
Right.
truly urgent, the team plus product owner plus scrum master review if it's worth canceling the sprint, which is again a serious step under scrum but allowed. So this gives manager a clarity on how to bring those changes and what to expect exactly.
Hmm.
So that's, I think, something which we can emphasize. You also mentioned about matrices. So yes, use matrices to tell the story, show data. So with some example that how often this scope change mid sprint what will going to happen, how much work is unfinished, or how the team
Mm-hmm.
velocity is going to impact it, right? So
Yeah.
use
Yeah.
this not as a blame, but as an insight. So you
Yeah.
can tell them like, look, when we reduce interruption, we deliver 20% more value, something like
Mm.
that. So we can showcase some sort of data with the help of matrices, that will be good. And I would say also invite your these kind of managers in your scrum events and things like,
Yeah.
just to feel the pulse, like, okay, what exactly we are doing and why we are doing and how we are doing, right? So
Mm.
intervention happens because manager feels left out sometime. So if you invite them to your sprint review, your planning, your backlog refinement, where they can shape future work without disrupting the present. So
Mm.
this builds buy-in from all these kind of stakeholders, right? So I think that's again an important aspect. And the last, I just want to say that coach leadership on mindset, not on just on process. So help them to shift from a
Mm.
command and control mindset, that okay, I must tell my team what to do now, right? I mean, that is the typical mindset which these people have, to an outcome driven mindset. Okay, so let's set the clear goal, trust the team, and inspect the progress regularly. So this take
Mm.
time, but as an coach, as an scrum master, you can guide the leader on that journey. So I think that's again an important point over here. And last but not the least is like, celebrate your win publicly. So when a manager respect the Scrum framework, they see the positive results, highlight and celebrate it. So this also encourage
Mm.
others to follow, and
Yeah.
that will
Yeah.
create that kind of culture among your organization. So I think, yeah, that's few of the points which I just gathered from your conversation. So that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to our next question. So next question is, let's say two of your Scrum team working on a same product, and then they keep stepping on each other's toes, because yeah, of course they have dependency clashes and frictions and things like that. So how do you improve the collaboration between these kind of teams? Just like an interdependency, and all
Mm.
sort of issues are happening. So what you're going to do? What will be your approach?
Okay. So I think this is the exact scenario which we have in our squads. Like, so basically, you need to first understand from both the squads or both the teams onto what exactly is the real issues on why is the conflict, right? From understand individually from both the squads or both the teams onto why exactly is the conflict, what are the dependencies we have across, right? Is it properly derived in the user story? Do we have things mapped appropriately in the user stories or at the epic level or at the capability level? You need to check those things as well. Is it properly documented, all these things? And at the same time, if there are any conflicts, understand why it is, right? First of all, everything boils out to first thing, that is listen, right, from both the parties onto why exactly is the conflict, and jot down those things. And second thing is that now let me explain with an example, a real time example which happen in our organization as well. So there is two teams, okay, which are interdependent on each other. So you need to have a proper vision or a common goal which is being set, like maybe the development standard which is set, and dependencies derived properly. You need to have a proper dependency matrix set for these both teams, right? So all these things we have to do it during the prioritization stage, or maybe during the refinement stage, right? As a product owner or as a tech leads, they need to take care of all these things. Second thing is that uh, um, now this is let me go back to the example. So example was that one team, our team was basically involved in reviewing the PRs for the other team, okay? So they were continuously giving the PRs, and they were like stating that this is not being reviewed and we are lagging. And as a result, what happened is our team was taking their own time to review the PRs and give the comments, right? Review comments, and they were giving in their own time because there was they were busy with their own priorities, their own work, right? Work items. So they didn't have much time to work on the other work items, and there were only few team members who were constantly providing the reviews, right? Since they had more expertise, right? So that's what was happening, and as a result they had to, the scrum master from the other team started interrupting every now and then, please review the PRs, and he kept poking the team members. So as a result that went to an it was a conflict. Basically they started complaining with me, stating that it is disturbing our routine, and continuously they're pinging us and stuff like that. But on their part also they were right. They're not able to deliver the aspects within the given time frame. As a result it went to the management level, got escalated and stuff like that, right? So they are also dependent. Now what happened is, there is a dependency. You see that there is a dependency, right, of us reviewing the PRs of them, and at the same time we need to also set up such an atmosphere that everyone looks into the code, because it is dependent, right, dependent code, and everyone understands what the other team is doing, right? That is second thing. And now how did we do a dependency management over here? First thing what we did is that we involved those people in our some of the events, like could be it's a daily scrum, we involved in daily scrum, and we involved them in sprint reviews. Because of this, what happened is, at least they are aware of what are our priorities, and if they have any of the challenges, right, from our team, then they can highlight in the daily scrum, and even in the review they would know what are the new priority aspects coming in and what are the challenges they would have because of these changes, right? So we involved them continuously in the sprint review as well as daily scrum. And the third part was that dependency management. How we did was that we set up for a particular call. We came to a conclusion, or I would say agreement, I would say, between the two squads, that whenever they have PRs for review, they need to prioritize those PRs. And as per the priority, right, we have set the SLA that if there are top priority PRs that has to be reviewed by our team, then we set up a SLA. Let's say within 3 days or within 4 days, this has to be done. That you provide the entire review comment and you approve the PR, right? So that they can continue with their work. So that's the thing. So we have set a SLA. Now this is the agreement which is done. Now, whenever there are priority aspects, the Scrum Master from that particular team would inform in our daily Scrum that we have these priority aspects, and he would post it in the channel also. We have a common channel, so he would post in that saying that these are the priority aspects which has to be considered, and the SLA is 3 days or whatever it is. So that now the team is having some direction that yes, within 3 days we have to do this particular aspect also. So they would spend some time, and I have also set up a particular timeline, like 15 minutes, at least bear some 15 minutes, like 5 to 5:15 I have set up a call for just for PR review. Like in case if you have missed out in your day, right, any day whenever you're free, please allot this particular time slot for PR review so that they are not hindered, right? So this is how we have managed the dependency. And then we had a clear communication as well. Now whatever their concern is, they will either tell it out in the daily scrum or sprint review also, they would understand things. And then we took a feedback session, right? Once we did these things, now it resolved their problem. It didn't affect us also. I mean, repeated intervention was not there. So as a result, our team could finally focus on our aspects as well, our deliverables. So we took a feedback on the sessions, right? And then we worked on, both the teams were happy, and this is the way in which we have reduced the conflicts. We have worked on dependencies. We conveyed things in a smoother fashion.
Wonderful. Great,
Yeah.
Amrita, for that. Okay. So my take from this answer is that we have to first of all set up a shared product goal. I think that's very
Yes.
important. That make sure that both the teams are aligned under a single product goal and a shared backlog, and of course owned by only one product owner. So this avoid team pulling in different directions. I think that's important point just to start with. And of course, we have to create a regular cross-team syncs like Scrum of Scrum. So we should make sure that all our representative from each team, it can be Scrum Master, it can be any key developer or anyone who can come together, they can share their update, they can discuss the dependencies, and they can, of course, they have to raise some flag, different risk as early as possible. And of course, we have to keep it lightweight and focused, specifically on the dependencies part. I think that's something which we should do. And as you also mentioned about the dependencies, right? So we should map the dependencies openly and early as soon as possible. So of course we can use any visual tool. It can be Jira, it can be Miro, it can be anything,
Yeah.
or even a physical wall is also good. But where both teams can clearly see which stories, which tasks are linked and not linked, right?
Yeah.
So maybe we can make some dependency mapping or something like that. The idea is make your dependency transparent, so there is no
Correct.
surprise mid sprint suddenly, so people are aware about, okay, this is going to happen, this is my input, that will be my output, and things like that. So we have to do that and align our sprint schedules. That's, I think, it's important. If we have to ensure that both our team have synchronized sprint planning, if they have, we can come up with a sprint review and a retrospective. That is also going to help in
Right.
this case. I think this make it easier to coordinate work, and we have to ensure that the feedback is shared across both the teams. The people understand, the team member understand what is the feedback from the stakeholders, different stakeholders. And of course, in these kind of challenging scenario, I think PO and Scrum Master um, collaboration, their sync is again very important. So we have to make sure that the PO and the Scrum Master, both teams, are regularly communicating. uh, they play a key role in aligning the priorities and unblocking the
Hmm.
dependencies. Of course, they both should sync regularly, I think. And yeah, the next point is maybe we can also use some retrospective for joint learning. So maybe we can hold some joint retrospective occasionally. It's not like every here and then, but occasionally we can have some cross team retros just to reflect on where the friction is coming from, and
Hmm.
we both as a team can come up with a solution, right? So let the team themselves suggest some improvements, that how we can work on these challenges and
Yeah.
conflicts and things like that. And of course, in the last, we have to clarify the ownership and the boundaries. So clearly define which part of the product each team owns and which type of work they are responsible for. So this will also reduce overlap and confusion. Sometimes things are overlapping, so people thought, okay, you are going to do, I'm going to do, and no one is going to do
Yeah.
in the last.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. And yeah, in the last, like, you have to give a message that one team, we are one team, like one team mindset, right? So we have to remind both the teams that they're not competing with each other, but then they are like part of one product team. They
Yeah.
are part of one solution, right? So maybe we can also encourage them to celebrate some joint wins, or maybe we encourage some sort of peer work, or something like that, some knowledge sharing across the teams, something like that. So I think these are the few things which we can also work on, additional to whatever you just mentioned out there, Indira. Okay. uh, shall we move on?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. So the next question is, let's say you notice that during a retrospective, there are few action items that are recorded, they are already there, but then really followed over the period of time. So what step do you take to improve the accountability and the follow-up on action items from your retrospective, or let's say any action items from your sprint, from your past sprints, from your project?
Hmm. So yeah, so this is one of the most important aspect, right? Wherein we'll inspect and adapt, and we will probably work upon certain things in the upcoming sprint and or improvise over the upcoming sprint, right? So whenever there is a retrospective set, so whatever has to be started, right? We formulate it as a action item, and first thing is when you set it as an action item, it's not just you formulate it anyhow you want, right? It has to be in a smart way wherein it's specific and it is, measurable, attainable, and relevant and time bound. So when it is all set in a proper aspect, right, proper way, so you know now how much to do, what to do, I mean, what could be the impact of this, and who has to, I mean, what is the time limit you have for achieving that particular action item. Also, whenever I set up in any of the, like, we use Jira basically. So what I do is that I'll set up a particular ownership for each of the action item, right? I'll set the owner, so that you don't take all the action item as a scrum master on your plate, right? You know whom you need to follow up for this particular action item, right? So you need to set up a particular ownership for that owner for each of the action item. That is one more aspect. So now next, what I would do is that we generally, what I practice is that after completion of every sprint, I send out a sprint report, right? Wherein I'll have a tabular section for the retrospective action items and who are the owners for those and what is the status of it currently. Is it not started or is it in progress or is it completed? And what I would do is that I will review these things in the next retrospective, like where we stand, right? In the meantime, during the sprint, of course, we need to follow up on these particular action items. But however, let's say we have completed around 50%, right? I would also discuss during the next retrospective with the team, along with the team, right, where we stand on these particular action items, which are in progress, but maybe because of due to any of the reasons we are not able to progress, right? And you can also convert these action item into task, right, wherein you can track these particular action items. So for example, if you are using Jira, right, you can always as an when you set up a particular action item, it will give you an option to convert it into a issue or convert it into a particular task, right, so that you can track it and you can see how many of them are completed, how many of them are still open, and how many of them need to be worked upon, right? So accordingly, you prioritize those action items, first of all, like which are the top priority action items that need immediate action, which can be considered possibly later. Maybe some of the, for example, like some of the knowledge shares things, which the entire team has to know, probably, which is out of the deliverables, right? But the team is interested to know on certain aspects. So those things can take a backseat, right? It's not a top priority aspect. So you can set up some bi-weekly sessions, knowledge share sessions or something like that, and you can educate the team. But it is not the top priority action item. So you need to prioritize those things first. Now, summarizing all the things, I would say that first, you set up the action items, prioritize these action items, which forms the top priority, which forms second, and which forms the least prior action items, right? And set up ownership for each of the action item so that you know whom to follow up for each of the action items, right? So during the sprint, you got to do that, right? It's not as a Scrum Master, we need to follow up on these aspects. And second thing is that define the ownership. Of course, the team has to take up this ownership. It's not that as and when you ask the team, they decide onto it and get things done, right? But they have to take up the ownership. As a Scrum Master, you need to coach onto the importance of taking the ownership of in any of the action items, right? How important it is. And then what you need to do is that review these action items. As I mentioned, in the next sprint retrospective, you just go through these retrospective points and review them where we lie and what are the priority aspects that is still need to be worked upon and why it is not done. Then you go about follow up. So this, I think, it is a step-by-step process which we can follow to get the action items done.
Wonderful. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Agreed, Anvita, with you. Just one or two small points just to
Mm,
add. So, I think the very first point is we should also try to limit the number of action items. So, let's
mm,
say in place of 10 improvements, which nobody has time to follow, maybe we can help the team to just to pick, one or two high impact action items,
mm,
actions which can realistically tackle next sprint, we can which we can work on.
right.
So the idea is like less is more and it's easier to track. So maybe we can say that, okay, team, let's focus on just the top two actions which we can commit to
Mm,
bring to the next this upcoming sprint, and we can always revisit the others later on. So that will give a team a clear time, like, okay, where they have to follow on which of those action items, as you
mm,
also mentioned about the priorities. But then even with the priorities, like if we can just pick top, let's say two three, let's
mm,
finish
mm.
them first and then only bring the other one into the picture. So that's one thing. And of course, second thing is sometimes you forget to make those action items visible. Sometimes they are just lying
Yeah,
in some
yeah.
Excel sheet or some board, and which we just review after 2 weeks or three sprints. So that's again which I have seen a challenge. So it's very important that you should make that, either you can make it the physical team board or have somewhere, maybe it's your conference dashboard or some
Mm,
Jira board, even your in your daily Scrum calls, put it somewhere where people can see, maybe just like a zero pointer user story or something like that in your Jira board or in whatever board you have, right? Just so the team see them, and then they can update the progress, right? So
Right.
you can say that, okay, I have added, two retro actions as a swim lane on our board that check in on these briefly during our daily scrum calls, something like that. So if you want, you can add a one swim lane or one user studio, whatever. The idea is visibility should be there. Sometimes we just
Yeah.
forget and we just take once, maybe in a week or something. So, but then visibility is gone. So other thing is,
Mm.
you also mentioned about clear owner.
Mm.
Absolutely agree with you. Like, instead of having again a problem, we all going to do it, team will going to do it. It's not going to work like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
At least have one team member to drive each action, right?
Right.
They are not doing all the work, but then they make sure that it's moving. So have someone. So let's
Yeah.
say, Sunan, would you be the owner of improving the test pipeline issue? You can pull in whoever you need, but you will be the single point of person for me or for all the team members, right? So have clear accountability, who is going to own that action item. It's very important, right?
Yeah.
And as you also mentioned, check during the sprint. So yes, as a scrum master, maybe you can add some quick retro action check-in during your daily scrum, or maybe mid
Mm.
sprint,
Mm.
maybe after every week, every Friday or every Tuesday or something like that. Okay, let's do a quick check whatever is happening on our all those items. So just like, okay, what are the progress on our action items?
Yeah.
uh, so just go through those action items. That will also give a team the visibility that yeah, people are working and actually something is happening on those action items. And of course, as you mentioned, review all the outcome at the next retro. So before you come up with the new action item, make sure that whatever we should revisit the last sprint action items, what was done,
Yeah.
what impact did it have. This close the feedback loop, right? So
Yeah.
tell them that, okay, last year to we decided to pair more on a tricky story. So how did that go? Should we continue? Should we adjust? Things like that. So ask those kind of questions. Then you will get a
Mm.
sense whether people actually feel it or just on sake of we are just closing the action items. So it's very important that people should understand that, okay, if action item is closed, what's happening, right? And sometimes even if you can link your action item to your sprint goal, that also great. Maybe
Mm.
you can mention that, okay, remember one of our sprint goal is to reduce the CI build failure, and our retroaction directly supports that. So that can also give a kind of shift that if we can add those action items with our success of our sprint goal or some with sprint success
Mm.
criteria, things like that. And the lastly, I would say celebrate your completed actions. So acknowledge
Yeah.
if someone has closed or action items, acknowledge. That
Mm.
will help team. It will then become a habit of your team members. You can say that great job improving whatever, that's a handoff between design and dev this sprint. It really reduce the back and forth, and let's capture what work and keep that going. So then these are the again your inputs for your retrospective items and things like that. So I think
Yeah.
yeah, in line with whatever you just mentioned. So I think it's help. I'm adding these points because people keep asking me to suffice,
Yeah.
put my
Right.
perspective as well. So that's the thing only over here. Okay, so let's move on to our next question. And the next question is, let's say after a few sprint, you notice that the team is, focus heavily on a new feature, but then they are, in a way, they are neglecting a non-functional requirements like performance in the security. So how do you bring balance to the backlog?
Yeah. So first thing first, right? So as a Scrum Master, what you have to do is first thing is you need to understand from the team why exactly they are focusing onto the new aspects. It could be the reason that most of the companies have this culture that we were not given the requirement, we don't know what to do. So whatever we have, we are just doing it. Like whatever is there in the acceptance criteria, we're just doing it. This is what we hear most of the time from the development team. So, first thing is you need to understand from the development team so as to why exactly they're not able to focus on these aspects. Is it not clearly defined, or don't they have any of the requirements set in place? That is one thing. And is it not communicated to them, maybe by the product owners or maybe by the tech leads, right? Onto what are the NFRs that has to be considered. It could be with respect to performance, with respect to security aspects, or whatever it is, right? It is not clearly defined. It can be these possible things. So first listen, right, from the team onto what exactly is the reason. And then second thing is that you need to educate. As I mentioned the previous answers also, you need to explain onto why NFRs are important for delivering any of the PPIs, right? Any of the features onto the where exactly that particular feature is would be a better release candidate, right? First thing is it would hinder the quality, right? Second thing is that, let's say for example, you are developing Instagram application, right? So there are millions of users who are using at the same time the same application, right? There can be a situation wherein let's suppose Instagram hangs up and you don't see any of the things, whatever. Let's say you want to post a particular reel, right, which is quite famous these days. So when you want to post a particular reel, it doesn't work because millions of users are working at the same time, using the application at the same time. So what happens is, here there's a performance issue, right? So you need to explain to the team, giving these examples, which is maybe used diligently every time by the team, right? So give an example and explain what would happen if the performance is not looked upon, for example, for applications like Instagram, right? So maybe millions of users wouldn't be able to use it at the same time. So that's one thing. And what happens if the data is not secure, whatever the login credentials we are providing, right? So if it is not secure, what would happen? There would be security aspects, right? Security issues. So security breach, basically. So all these things you need to educate the team on and explain them why NFRs are more important, right? It will considering the development aspect, it would facilitate more quality onto whatever we are delivering to the stakeholders. That is one thing. And we need to make it visible, as we mentioned in the previous answers as well, right? We need to make it visible and clear to the team as well, so as to what NFRs they need to focus on, right? So this has to be documented somewhere, let's say in the form of user story, or maybe there should be some epic derived for these things, for all the NFRs itself, so that they can look upon these things once the feature is completed, right? So that is important. And we need to prioritize as well, right? We need to discuss, the team need to discuss with the product owner and with Scrum Master as well as tech leads. Let's say you have a team where tech leads are also involved. So you need to prioritize as well these aspects, right? So let's say you have completed feature 1, 2, and the related NFRs also has to be considered. And you need to also include these aspects in your sprint reviews, right? So that the stakeholder is also aware onto what are the NFRs that are being considered for this particular feature, so that they can also use. For example, one of my previous organizations, as I mentioned in one of my video, I had mentioned this example, wherein when multiple users use at the same time, the application wouldn't work. So then he was really frustrated during the review session, stating that when I'm using at the same time, the same person is other person is using, it is not working. Application is not reliable. It's not efficient, right? So this creates frustration. So these things and all, you need to help the team understand these things and include them in the reviews as well. And then you can also make sure that include them in the definition of done as well. So whenever you're providing any of the PBIs, right, you have this checklist derived. Could be what percentage of completion, that maybe you can derive it as per the team capacity or as per the team composition and as per the application as well. But there should be some of the checklist derived for these things as well. Maybe that is one of the aspect which you need to consider, which determines the quality. So then I think yeah, these are the aspects. And how you would communicate is through retrospective, or maybe during any of the knowledge share sessions, you can educate the team, right? So the importance of these NFRs. So I think these are all the aspects which you can put forth together and help the team prioritize and work upon the NFRs.
Wonderful, Anita. I think you
Yeah.
covered most of the point. Just to add, so I think very first point is that we should raise awareness with the product owner and the team. So, for example, let's say in a
Yeah,
backlog
yeah.
deployment, you can gently highlight that okay, we have been sprinting hard on the features, but we haven't
Mm,
touched performance or a security stories in a while. So, should we
mm,
check if any NFRs are becoming risk? Raise these kind of questions, and this creates shared awareness without blaming anyone. So I
yeah,
think
yeah.
we as a Scrum Master should come up with these kind of powerful open-ended questions. And
Mm,
other thing is, let's try to have NFR visible on your backlog. So
right.
help your PO and team, ask them very explicitly that okay, add NFR stories or technical task into the backlog. Sometimes they just say okay, we'll handle it later. Don't buy in that
Yeah.
that idea. So tell them that okay, we need to have our NFRs or technical debt stories on our backlog. So that's something. Uh, Give them some kind of bandwidth, add capacity for
Mm,
tech task in each sprint. So agree with your team or with your product owner to at least reserve 10% or 20%, whatever capacity
mm,
each sprint for some technical improvements, for refactoring or for NFR. Right? So let's say you tell them, okay, let's always have at least one or two tech stories per sprint so that we can improve steadily over the period of time. Right.
mm,
So I think that also something which we can bring in. Apart from that, maybe we can also use matrices to uh, show them some kind of invisible risk. So maybe like we can tell them that we can share some sort of data that okay, this page load times are keep on
mm,
increasing 15% over the last three sprints, or let's say error rate in logs have doubled since the last release, things like that, right? So this make the hidden visible, and that will motivate
mm,
the team and your PO to act on it, right? So I think these are the few additional point which we can add on top of whatever you just mentioned. Of course, you mentioned
mm,
about prioritization and you mentioned about DoD, right? We should have, of course, we should update our DoD, include some basic NFR checks. Maybe we can say that
yeah.
okay, every feature must pass some performance baselines, some basic security checks, and
Mm,
some unit test coverage. Right? So this ensure that NFR are not just treated as a separate extra work, but part of every story quality standards. Right. So we
right.
have to introduce these kind of small changes in our DoD as well. So I think that's really
Yeah.
going to help. Okay, Anita, wonderful. Let's move on to our next question. And the next question is on DoD itself. So let's say your team have just adapted Scrum, but then they're struggling with understanding and implementing the definition of done consistently over the period of time. So how do you guide them towards the clarity and a shared ownership of your DoD?
Yeah. So first of all, here the team is already, let's say, practicing Scrum, right? They know what they have to develop. They know what is the sprint goal and stuffs like that. So, but they are not aware of what exactly the OD criteria is and how it'll help them to deliver the PBIs in a, let's say, one sprint or two sprint, whatever is being set, right? The release duration. So, first thing is that we need to educate the team, as we kept mentioning in the previous answers, right? So, first we need to educate the team onto what is the importance of DoD criteria, right? For example, this is for everyone, I would say. First of all, we need to every team has a different can have different set of DoD criteria defined based on the applications what they are working on and based on the delivery timelines and stuff like that. So first of all, you need to have you need to make sure that the product PBIs what you're planning to deliver has some quality checks, has some user manuals, or has some design documents, has some unit test cases which is being done, and has some testing which is done, which could be functional and which could be regression, and some percentage of automation. It's not that every time you complete 100% automation, right? During your
Mhm.
PBI delivery. So you need to have some percentage of automation completion, and your user manual should be updated and approved, all these things. So you need to have certain set of checklists. What value it adds to your delivery is that you know now what to deliver. You're not confused of what can be possible things. Let's say you have completed ABC feature, right? ABC user story, for example. Now it is when exactly it is said to be a right candidate for release is that when you have all these checklists which is being checked, which is you have to do the unit testing, you have the design documents, you have the acceptance criterias which are in place, and which are being reviewed by whosoever, like product owners or business analysts you have in the team, right? And you have all of the functionalities which is working. How would you check that? Using functional testing. And then you would also check that you don't have the recurring bugs which are there. You have the top priority bugs which are being worked upon before delivering, right? You have the user manual which is being provided to the end users so that they easily ease out their UAT as well as the production, right? Usage. So that those things you need to derive certain checklists, and you need to have a proper idea defines the quality. So once you educate, right, you need to have a stipulated checklist derived, like as I mentioned before. You need to have those checklists derived. So in my previous organizations we had set up in the Azure board itself that whenever one particular task is done, we enable the toggle. So basically, there were toggles which were set. So we enable that. Let's say the development team has completed the unit testing, enable that toggle, and then you goes to the other aspect. At the same time, we would also document this unit test, right? Sometimes it so happen that they just toggle it, but they'll not finish off, they'll not document it, right? So in that case, you need to have the evidences in place, right? So those things. And once you educate the team, there should be like clear understanding between the product owners and between the team as well, like what is required for the PPIs to be delivered. I think with these things in place, the intent of DoD criteria is conveyed. At the same time, it can be followed as well in a desired manner, ensuring the quality. So yeah,
Okay. Okay. Wonderful, Anita.
that's
Yeah.
from me.
Thank you for that. Okay. Great, Anvita. Just to add, again, a small point, not something which you already said. So I think when we are having this team, right, I think we should start a team with some kind of workshop, maybe a collaborative workshop where
Hmm.
teams define together what does this done mean for us as a team across coding,
Yeah.
across testing, across documentation, deployment, or whatever you had, right? So have this kind of workshop with the team first. Use maybe any tool or physically or anything. Brainstorm
Yeah.
all the activities that are needed before a product backlog item is truly ready for release. Why? Because teams are more likely to own the DoD when they co-create it. So it's very important that we
Hmm.
as a team should come together, your product owner, you as a scrum master, and your all your developers, all the members come together, create this definition of done. That's very important. I think that's the first point which we all should do. If we already have already defined definition, it's a time to revisit it again. It's always a good
Yeah.
idea to do that if you are joining some new organization or some team to do that. And as you mentioned that duty is all about the quality and the customer value, right?
Yeah.
So we should not just explain what the DoD, but why it's important, why it matters,
Yes.
right? So the DoD ensure that everything we deliver meets some quality standard, some bar which we have raised for ourselves, right? So no hidden gaps, no surprises for users or the stakeholders. Right? So use that. Put some real examples like, okay, remember that the last sprint when a story passed, but uh, dev failed in UAT because there's not a strong DoD. So let's maybe we can update our DoD or things like that. So try to connect your quality customer value with your DoD. That will definitely going to help. And as I keep on mentioning, make it visible, embed in your daily work. That's very important that during your daily scrum calls, as a scrum master, you can gently ask them, politely you can ask them that, okay, are there any tasks still missing for the story to meet the DoD definition of done? And maybe that during the reviews you can check, okay, does this increment meet everything in our DoD? that will trigger, all these questions will trigger your developers to check, go back and do that again and again, because now you are asking them again and again. So it will be like the habit for them. Do that, and of course DoD will improve over the period of time. So in your retrospective, you can review your DoD. If you think that it's not been reviewed after a long time, maybe check, like, okay, did our DoD is still valid? Is there any gaps? Should we add? Should we adjust anything? Sometimes you have to remove a couple of items from the DoD as well. It's not like always about the adding the stuff. So the idea
Yeah.
is your DoD is not static. It evolves as the team mature. Few things which are relevant earlier are not relevant now. Few things you have to add over the period of time. And of course, you have to align your product owner and all your stakeholder on this definition of done, right? Because when we say, oh, our DoD include code testing, acceptance criteria,
Yeah.
we need all the stakeholder input as well, right? So I think we have to ensure that our PO and the stakeholder understand and support the DoD, and it's not just for your dev team only. Okay, so try to incorporate these other
Yeah.
stakeholders as well when you can come up with your DoD. Okay, wonderful, Anvita. I think, yeah, these are the few additional points just want to add. Okay, let's move on to our next question. So let's say one of your new product owner joins, and the PO wants to reprioritize the backlog drastically, but your team is midway through delivering a large feature. So how are you going to manage this transition smoothly?
Yeah. So first of all, once is a when a new product owner joins, you need to first of all greet that particular product owner and introduce to the team, and then possibly get along his view on the product visions, like his idea onto the vision, right? So you need to understand from his perspective, and as I mentioned in almost like all the answers, right? Second thing is that why there is a drastic push for delivering new aspects within the particular within the team, right? So you need to understand from the product owner that the new product owner has joined in, but why is the new change, right? And then you need to contextualize onto the what is there in the current scenario, right? What is the current team focusing on? What could be the possible capabilities that they are focusing on, and what forms the priority for the maybe the stakeholder for the work items that they are working currently working, right? You need to showcase those things as well, so that the product owner is aware of what the team is working on, what is the priority which is set for those aspects, and what importance it holds for the stakeholder, right? And where are they with the particular capability or with the particular epic or whatsoever it is, right? um, so those things you need to contextualize and you need to explain to the new product owner, and then take see that the new aspects, whatever he or she is adding within the particular team, does it align with the existing one, right? And how important it is for the team to work upon the new item, whereas considering deprioritizing the existing work items, right? So before they do the context switching, they need to understand, right? You need to have a combined discussion with the product owner and the team, and understand views, right? So what forms the priority? That there should be a sense of clarity to the team. It should not be like a chaotic situation, which is they're working something and this new thing comes and then they'll move to this. No, that won't happen, right? So that's very important, you need to understand, and then have a clear communication channels as well, like as mentioned, ensure that if it is consistently happening, then ensure that it is being worked upon as one of the action items in the retrospective, right? So that there is no context switching, there is no chaotic situation within the team, and there is no the team is not
Hmm.
misled, and they're clear on the roadmap which is being set, let's say for the 2 3 sprints, right? So you need to have a clear communication between the product manager team as well as the scrum master need to have, and the stakeholders definitely. And you need to get a buy-in from the stakeholder as well whenever the new aspects come in, right? So where is it documented, from where it is coming? You need to understand those aspects also before imposing it on the team, right? So you need to have a buy-in from the stakeholder and see where exactly these things lie. So I think with these things in place, probably it would definitely work. Sunan, yeah,
Okay, wonderful, Anita. Yeah, thank you for that. I think you just, I'm not going to elaborate much, but then I think you
yeah,
mentioned about that have a clear one-to-one with the new product owner. Like,
yeah.
stay calm and clarify with your PO what is the intent of doing all these change, right? So if you can
Mm-hmm.
ask your PO that, okay, can you help me understand why these priorities need to be changed urgently?
Right.
Is there a market shift? Is there a stakeholder pressure? Or is some new data driving these changes, right? So when you
Mm.
understand the why, you need to understand this why before you are going to react, right? Sometimes
Yes,
it's
yes.
valid, sometimes it's not valid. So do that first. I think that's an
Mm.
important point. And of course, um, educate your P on Scrum
Right.
agreements and things like that. Okay, if the sprint goal is fixed during the sprint, we should avoid mid-sprint changes. Unless the work become
Mm.
absolute or no longer available. So let's capture the new priorities for the next sprint while completing our current commitment. So these kind of things we should educate our PO if you
Mm.
feel that PO is not aware about, and if needed, reassess if your sprint goal is still valid or not valid. And then, of course, communicate openly with your team. Um,
Mm.
do a plan smooth transition if it's the case, something like that. So I think, yeah, I think you have already covered a lot of on this, so I don't have to spend much time on that. So that wonderful, Anita. And I think with this, we came to end of the session. It's almost like I think 40, 50 minutes. So wonderful. Thank you, Anita, for this. And
Thank you.
thank you, friends, for joining us today. And if you found the value in this session, smash that like button, subscribe, and share. And it really helps us to grow if you share these videos with all of your other colleagues and friends and on LinkedIn. So see you in the next session. Until then, take care. This is Sunil Sharma signing off along with Anvita. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye. Thank you, Anvita.
Thank you, Sunan. Thank you, Sunan.
Thank you.